Okay, I call to order this regular meeting of the Monument Board of Trustees, Monday, June 7th, 2021. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. To the republic, one nation. Ms. Hogan, will you take roll, please?
Mayor Wilson,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Here.
Trustee Clark,
Here.
Trustee LeKind,
Here.
Trustee Romanello,
Here.
Trustee Stevens,
Here.
Trustee Unruh.
Here.
Okay, before us, we have a consent agenda. I have a couple modifications I would like to make. Item 5D and 5E, I would like to have switched around so that ordinance 25-2021 actually comes before ordinance 24-2021. The other modification I would like to make is we have item 7A, Tabor discussion. I would like to remove that item because in board authorization items, we already have the debrucing and Tabor item on there, and we can discuss it briefly in our board authorizations if need be. Is there any other modifications or any objections to those modifications?
I move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan, will you take roll?
Trustee Clark,
Yes, as modified.
Trustee Unruh,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee LeKind,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Trustee Romanello.
Yes.
Okay, item 4A, Girls of the West. Catherine Tuman. Oh, okay. Okay.
Mayor Wilson and trustees of the Board of Trustees. And yes, first of all, thank you for allowing us to be on the agenda this evening and present to you. I'm Dr. Nathan Brightwell, president of the Pikes Peak Range Riders, and I'd like to tell you a little bit of history of the Pikes Peak Range Riders and of course to promote the Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo. The Pikes Peak Range Riders were founded in 1949 by Ken Brookhart, who was a lumber businessman and later went on to found Brookhart Lumber Company, and Everett Conover, who was a family of the Conover Motor Company in Colorado Springs. Our organization has grown from the original 39 members to more than 200 now. We have a cross section of our community made up of cowboys, farmers, ranchers, policemen, firemen, military veterans and reservists, bankers, merchants, lawyers, doctors, brokers, accountants, various craftsmen, elders, realtors, salesmen, business owners, business developers, plumbers, electricians, city and council leaders, and a past state senator. The Range Rider Memorial in Colorado Springs is a larger-than-life bronze statue located at the southeast corner of Cascade Avenue and Pikes Peak Avenue. This is adjacent to the original Fountain Colony marker, which was the birthplace of Colorado Springs. The statue depicts Ken Brookhart on the mule and Everett Conover on the horse. And around the perimeter of this memorial are the names of our deceased range riders and the year they passed. The mission of the Pikes Peak Range Riders is threefold. One is support and promote the Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo. The second mission is support the Pikes Peak Range Rider Foundation. And third, we try to preserve and carry on our Western heritage. And I'd like to talk just a little bit about those three missions. The Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo, which is the 14th of July, and then the Western Street Breakfast, which is a week from this coming Wednesday. The proceeds of those two events are used to support a wide variety services to military families in all branches of the military station here in the Pikes Peak region. Colorado Springs Western Street Breakfast draws thousands of people each year to an early breakfast prepared by area military volunteers. So we certainly would encourage you to come to our street breakfast next week. The Pikes Peak Range Rider Foundation is the home of the Pikes Peak Range Riders and is a large indoor and outdoor equestrian facility located north of Falcon on Hallelujah Trail, which is a community in Elbert, Colorado. Latigo houses the Stable Strides Therapeutic Riding Center, the Range Rider Museum, and stages year-round events involving various youth groups such as 4-H clubs, Little Britches rodeos, rodeo Bible camps, the Winter Silver Buckler Series for horsemanship, and various other year-round events involving youth groups, horsemen, and horsewomen. Pikes Peak Rangerettes is an elite equestrian drill team made up of young ladies between the ages of 12 and 20 who are full of class and finesse. The prospective riders for the Rangerettes must meet certain specific standards regarding character, morals, a desire to participate in precision riding, horsemanship, and be involved in extracurricular school activities. The Pikes Peak Range Rider Pivots is also an equestrian drill team comprised of Range Rider members that was formed in 1954 to support military families in the Pikes Peak region by performing at venues throughout Colorado, Texas, and our neighboring states, most recently in Lake Havasu, Arizona. They have performed in Vernon, Texas, and I'm sure Mike Foreman traveled from Beaumont up to Vernon to see that performance, right, Mike? The pivots performed at the entrance of the grand entrance at the rodeo each year, and year after year they draw fans with their captivating routine, speed, and excitement with their performance. The Pikes Peak Special Rodeo, also supported by the Range Riders, is a rodeo whose participants are drawn from the Stable Strides Therapeutic Riding Center and the Colorado Springs Therapeutic Riding Center. This special rodeo is held each year in conjunction with the Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo. And finally, the Pikes Peak Posse, which is supported by the Range Riders, is a group of men and women from all walks of life in the Pikes Peak region who raise money each year to support our 4-H youth and help them market and sell their livestock at the annual Colorado State Fair. I'd like now to have Mike McCoy come up and tell us more specific things about the Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo. Thank you.
Good evening, Monument City Council. We appreciate you having us here tonight. I'm Mike McCoy. I'm the president of the Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo, and it's my distinct privilege and honor to be here tonight representing our rodeo. We have been a tradition in the Colorado Springs area since 1937, showcasing the top rodeo talent and providing family entertainment to the Pikes Peak region. Spencer Penrose established our rodeo and he built a legacy that honors the Western spirit, and since 1946, the proceeds from our rodeo go to the military community and our local service members and their families for their quality of life programs. In the history of our rodeo, the only time it hasn't been contested was during World War II and the COVID pandemic. Well, I'm here to tell you we're back and we're excited. And we would love for you to be out and join us. We really do. And, as retired Chief Master Sergeant, I've seen what the rodeo does for our community. And we want to build and grow on this and make this the best rodeo we've ever had. So I would invite you all to come out 14 to 17 July. If you need more information, go to our website, pikespeakerbus.org. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you out here. And I really appreciate your time. And now it is my honor to introduce the director of the Girls of the West, who I like to call the Mom of the West. And she was going to tell you about the Girl of the West program, and as I'm walking out.
While he's doing that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Corliss Palmer. I'm a 20-year volunteer of the rodeo. Oh.
Mr. Foreman, will you gather some extras for the board members attending remote? Thank you, ma'am. I just didn't want that to get missed. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you for having us tonight. I'm Corliss Palmer. I'm a 20-year volunteer of the Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo as director of the Girls of the West. I have a very special job as directing and escorting all of the Girls of the West in the past. And it's a very, we make about 150 appearances every summer. So we spend a lot of time together. And it's amazing the growth that these girls make. And I just want to mention that Rachel Broughton Lucas was the 2015 Girl of the West, and I know she's one of your best policemen in your community. Well, I expect that is the case. The Girls of the West story began in 1922, so next year's our 100th anniversary. It's about two young ambassadors for the rodeo and how they promote the Western way of life and the American girl Western type at our Pikes Peak or Bus Rodeo and many other events. Girl of the West is a 2-summer commitment with each girl chosen as aide one summer, and she's the aide the following summer, and then the Girl of the West. The aide is selected from a competition of horsemanship, appearance, interview, and speech. It's pretty exciting that we're having the rodeo, and I want to mention before I introduce Georgia that we have some posters in the back for the rodeo. If you could put them up around town, we would really appreciate it. We also have some flyers for the rodeo, the street breakfast, and a Western Heritage calendar of events in the whole community for the year. Georgia Strumenis is the 2021 Girl of the West. She's the 19-year-old daughter of George and Jenny Strumenis of Larkspur. Since the age of 10, she has been involved in the equine world, competing in 4-H, gymkhanas, Western and English, ranch horse, Western working ranch horse. She's also served as an ambassador for other rodeos in Colorado. She's a recent graduate of the Arapahoe Community College with a degree in communications, and she'll finish her 4-year at UCCS in Colorado Springs. Her brother currently is serving in the U.S. Army, so our mission is very dear to her. And she rides a paint horse named, enjoy Georgia, please.
Hi, my name is Georgia, and I am the Girl of the West. I serve as a proud ambassador for the Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo, and I have to tell you, I cannot wait for this year's rodeo. The Pikes Peak Bus is a very special rodeo for me and my family. We love all that it stands for: our Western heritage, the sport of rodeo, and especially giving back to the local military and their families. My brother is currently serving, so this is all very near and dear to my heart. I am proud to be a part of this rodeo family and the beautiful community that we live in. I am proud of an event that brings people from all over together to celebrate all that is good about our country, the growing sport of rodeo, and to honor the sacrifice made by those who serve this great nation. So I am more than excited to tell you that Championship Rodeo is coming to town this summer, July 14th through the 17th at the Norris Penrose Event Center. The Pikes Peak Bus is pro rodeo at its finest and one of the most beautiful venues there is to enjoy the sport. As a PRCA Pro Tour Rodeo, you will see the best athletes competing in the 7 events, which include bareback, steer wrestling, team roping, saddle bronc, tie-down roping, barrel racing, and bull riding. There's also fan favorite mutton bustin', where a trophy and a medal are awarded to the winner at each performance. And these trophies are even as tall as some of the kiddos. You won't want to miss our specialty act, professional rodeo entertainer Amanda Payne and her Longhorn Steer Wrangling Extravaganza. Tickets for the 80th Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo are on sale now, so buy yours early and online at pikespeakerbus.org to choose the best seats in the house. The rodeo runs Wednesday, July 14th through Saturday, July 17th, with performances at 7 p.m. Wednesday through Saturday evenings and a Saturday matinee at 12:30 p.m. The Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo is one for the true fan, the first-timer, and everyone in between. There's lots going on before the rodeo, too. The grounds will open at 4 p.m. before the evening performances and at 10 a.m. before our Saturday matinee. Come early, avoid the traffic, and enjoy all the family-friendly pre-show fun in our fan zone. There will be mutton busting tryouts, mechanical bull riding, pony rides, a petting zoo, dance lessons, and you can grab a bite to eat in our feedlot tent. And parking is free. Our local military are honored at each performance. Fort Carson on Wednesday evening, missile defense and first responders on Thursday evening, space night on Friday evening, the United States Air Force Academy at our Saturday matinee, and NORAD US Northcom on Saturday evening. The Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo has proudly been supporting local military and their families since 1946. All of the performances will start with the Pikes Peak Range Rider Pivots and the Pikes Peak Rangerettes drill teams, followed by the Fort Carson Mounted Color Guard. After the rodeo, stick around for autographs from the contestants, the Rangerettes, and the Girl of the West. That's me. Then head on over to the Coors Roadhouse Saloon for live music, dancing, and cold Coors. I'm counting on each of you being at this year's rodeo. The dates again are Wednesday, July 14th through Saturday, July 17th. Save time and purchase your tickets online. Discounts are available for military, groups, first responders, and children 12 and under. You can find all this information and much more about our rodeo at our website, pikespeakerbus.org. Be sure to wave to me when you see our awesome pink Perkins Ram truck all over town as I head out to represent the rodeo. Please also plan to join us bright and early on June 16th from 5:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. for the annual Colorado Springs Western Street Breakfast and the official send-off of the Pikes Peak Range Riders annual ride. Enjoy a $5 breakfast prepared and served by active duty military volunteers. Now you know why I'm so passionate about this rodeo and everything that it stands for. So I want to see all of you at the 80th Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo, July 14th through the 17th at the Norris Penrose Event Center in Colorado Springs.
Thank you, guys. Okay, that takes us to item 4B, Police Department Survey Results. Ms. Vandenhoek.
Good evening, Board. We have David Flaherty of Magellan Strategies who will be presenting the results of the Police Department survey.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Madeline and trustees. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to do this survey for you. I wish I could be there with you in person. I will be there soon. I just wanted to let you know I'm up at Colorado Counties Incorporated Annual Conference. So I wish I could be there, but I will be there soon. Thank you, Madeline, for kind of driving the bus on this. And with that said, let's get started. And Madeline, if you could go to slide number 2. Okay, this survey, what were our objectives on this one? It was to measure and understand voter support and opposition for a ballot measure to generate a funding source for the Monument Police Department. The survey also covered the favorability and the job approval ratings of the department, the opinion of how well the department is with taxpayer money, and then just some general information and messages on the reasons why the police department and the town is considering this ballot measure. Next slide, Madeline. Okay, methodology. This survey interviewed 563 registered voters in the town. The data collection method was MMS text messaging, as well as using the town's email list. We did also use some phones on this one where we dialed for a couple of nights. But this is a very large sample size considering. We completed the survey from May 11th to 18th, and the top line documents are, or responses have a margin of error of plus or minus just under 4%. And these results, folks, are weighted to likely turnout voter demographics. And Madeline, if you can go to slide 5, that would be great. Sorry, Madeline, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. As with the community survey, I think this is very important for people to understand. These survey results are weighted on a typical odd year turnout election. And this chart that you're looking at, this table, highlights what turnout has been in the town during a 2019 election and a 2017 election. And the demographics rarely change dramatically. And what I mean by that is, if you go down and look at the age groups, you'll see that seniors 65 and older typically make up about 24 to 25% of the vote. our results from this survey are weighted similarly. At the same time, voters that are 18 to 34 years old, they're weighted around 12%. So I just wanted you to understand that this is not weighted to town registration. This is not weighted to a midterm or even a presidential turnout. It's odd year turnout. But the other thing that's important, looking at the turnout by party, in the past, Republican voters have made up roughly 50 to 55% of the vote. Democrats about 14%, and unaffiliated voters are about around 30%. So please keep that in mind. Next slide, Madeline. Okay, the first thing when we're doing a ballot measure survey such as this is to measure the image rating and the job approval of the entity, which is the police department in this case, whether or not people believe they're doing a good job and they like them. So let's go to the next slide. And do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of the Monument Police Department? 84% have a favorable opinion. The subgroups of voters within the town are shown obviously on the right side. 93% favorability rating among Republicans, going down to 65% among Democrats. So you can see all of the important different voter subgroups. The police department has a very strong image rating. And again, why are we asking this? We're asking this because there are times when there may be an issue with the police department or the entity asking for money. 84% though overall is very good. Next slide, Madeline. Sorry, Madeline, can you go to the next slide? I'm not sure if I'm just missing it or not. So go to slide 9. Okay. Sorry, go one more slide. Yep, sorry. Hopping around a little bit. Okay, we're kind of ahead now. Now we're down on slide 13, my bad. Yep, if you could go up one more to the job approval rating. All right, that's fine. Right there. Okay, that's fine where we are. The other thing we'd like to measure is we like to ask voters whether or not they believe the entity asking for the money spends taxpayer money wisely. If voters don't believe the entity has been, efficient while spending taxpayer money, they're going to be less reluctant to support a ballot measure. Well, overall, as we can see, that 56% of respondents do agree with this statement. That's a good majority, but also not surprising, 1/3 of respondents said that I don't have an opinion. And that's very normal, okay, folks? And only 8% disagreeing. And again, if we look at the how it's broken out by voter subgroup, we see that Republicans and seniors, the two largest voting blocks within the town, we're seeing 60 and 67%, which is very good. So overall, this is a good measurement. But again, there's still a story to be told with 1/3 of voters saying that they do not have opinions. So next slide, Madeline. Okay, the next, and then go on to the next one, sorry. The next thing we'd like to ask voters before we get into details, in what percent of a tax increase are you talking about? We'd just like to ask, generally speaking, would you support or oppose a local sales tax increase to generating new funding for the police department? We like to start broad. This is a way for us to help advise and measure voter opinion on whether or not this is a good idea. And it's very good to see that 60% of voters say, yes, I would support a ballot measure that, to raise taxes, which is a solid and good measurement. And again, we break it out by multiple voter subgroups. So this is a good measurement. So far, so good. But now we want to get into the details. So let's go to the next slide, Madeline. And the next one. Yep. Okay, then we read to voters. We haven't told them anything, how the money's going to be spent. We're just saying, hey, the police department, one ballot measure being considered by the town is to generate a funding source for the police is an increase of the town's sales tax by 0.5%. This increase would raise the sales tax from 3.0% to 3.5%. Remember, everybody's reading and hearing this. And it's estimated to raise about 1.4 million annually. And a 0.5% increase would cost consumers 50 cents on a $100 purchase. We like voters to know what this is going to cost them. And then we ask them, knowing this information, if there was an election held today, would you vote yes and approve this or vote no and reject it? And next slide, Madeline. And as we can see, what we call the uninformed ballot test, and what we mean by that is we have not gotten into the details of how this money is going to be spent. We see that 2/3 of respondents saying yes, they would approve a half a cent sales tax increase or 0.5%. And then again on the right, we go top to bottom, showing many, many different voter subgroups. This is a good starting point for a ballot measure, obviously, where we have 2/3 of voters saying yes. I think this also jives with the community survey that we did. And then now we're going to move on to the message testing, or really the information questions, as we call it, where now what we did after this is then said, in your own words, please tell the reasons why you would support this sales tax increase. What are the major themes? Police are important to our community. And again, I encourage all of the members of the trustees to read through those verbatims. Our police and Monument have been underfunded for a long time. It's time we help them out. Safety is important. We back the blue 100%. We need new funding sources because of the area of growth. Our town is growing, and therefore we need the appropriate staffing and funding of our police department. And remember, we're talking about, they don't know all the details yet about why the police department needs these revenue. It's safe for community and so forth. So these are the major reasons why people support it. Now, why do people oppose it? We'll go to the next slide. Please describe the reasons why you would vote no and reject the sales tax increase. We have some Democrat and some progressive voters in there. Defund the police, don't find more ways to fund them. This is not uncommon. We've seen this in 3 other surveys that we're doing currently in the state of Colorado, in different regions, in more moderate areas of the state, as you could argue. But this is very, very common. There's also comments in there, though, this money should be towards roads, other priorities that they think. I'm a senior. We're overtaxed as it is. These reasons are very common, folks, especially for seniors that are living on fixed incomes, and they're very concerned about living their retirement and their resources. So no need for increasing police budgets. Those are really the 2 major reasons why. And then, just taxes are too high already. And that's not surprising, okay? When half of your electorate, 50 to 55%, this is a very typical reaction among a Republican area. And again, we're not going to beat around the bush. It's the political makeup of your town. So let's move on to the next slide, please. Now we have information regarding the needs. And again, there's an introduction here where you say, and we tell people, we're now going to read to you some information about how the money will be spent, why this is being considered, and so forth. And Chief Hemingway came up with, most of these, and town staff. We will now have 4 to 5 officers on patrol at all times. Before Chief Hemingway in February of 2020, at times only 1 officer was on patrol duty for a 12-hour shift. We are telling specific factual things to respondents so they understand more about how much the police department is trying to get done within where they are. We're trying to reduce response times. Currently, emergency response can take 14 to 17 minutes when an officer has to go from one end of the town to the other. Not just professional law enforcement, but most people agree that this is unacceptable, and that, especially for a resident, needs an immediate response. Next slide, Madeline. We're going to be able to update our arrest report software and computers. I think this is very telling. Currently, if somebody is picked up by the police department and they run their background information, the information that El Paso County law enforcement has, if this person does have a record, if you will, they cannot communicate right now, and they need to upgrade their software so that they can share information on folks to run just general criminal background. When people hear this, they understand, wow, I didn't know that. That makes sense. We talk about the vehicle fleet being overdue for maintenance and new cars. Next slide, Madeline. 5th Squad Patrol Unit. Again, if this ballot measure is approved, it'll help come up with a unit to help address break-ins, burglaries, and so forth. The other thing is talking about right now, there's only 1 detective on staff, and that the chief would like to hire a 2nd female detective to be hired to especially address sensitive sexual assault cases, if you will, and other things. The other thing is having 2 detectives. It has to, there's just more time to investigate more complicated crimes, et cetera, et cetera. So next slide, Madeline. And again, these are other things: hiring professional police administrative staff, updating equipment such as tasers and other things that are outdated. Next slide, Madeline. And so that was the story that we told the respondents, from the chief. What was the number one thing? And then we asked them, knowing this information, are you more likely or less likely to support the ballot measure? As I mentioned before, just having background check information to be able to communicate and access with other local area law enforcement, 81% were saying, yeah, we need to address that. Half of respondents said, I'm much more likely to support the sales tax increase knowing that. Having 4 to 5 officers on patrol at all times, second strongest message. 1 detective, second female detective to be hired. That made a lot of sense to a lot of voters, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these messages, all of these information questions very much made sense to people. And the thing about this survey is that they're able to get the full information. So go ahead, Madeline, to the next slide. And then the next slide, and again, these ranking the messages so that we can get to the informed ballot test. So next slide. And the informed ballot test, I apologize for that text running over, is, now that you've heard some information about why this is being considered, would you vote yes and approve it or vote no and reject it? And support goes up to 74%. And the definitely yes approve. I mean, the fact that we have just under 50% of voters saying, yes, I definitely would vote yes and approve this, and 26% probably, as you can see, if a future message, and this is referred to the ballot, and that's the story about why the police wants this, in our professional opinion, from doing this for 15 years and, over 300 ballot measure surveys, this is likely to have a good opportunity to pass based on this survey. So next slide. Change in voter support. The uninformed ballot, you had 2/3 of voters saying, yes, I would approve this. After hearing the information, it moves up by 10 points. But more importantly, go to the next slide, Madeline. We can show the different subgroups that moved. Seniors were already there. They went from 72% support up to 78%. So support among seniors moved by 6 points. But among unaffiliated voters, which, as we know, is nearly 1/3 of the electorate, support went from 51% up to 65%. Tri-View area, women, 68% to 79%. So these are forecasted support increases if they are informed about what is this sales tax increase all about, if that's the story based on the information. So next slide. And again, we asked an open-ended question. Please describe the reasons why you would vote yes and approve it. We're echoing some of the similar comments that we saw before, but again, police are important to the community. The police need new equipment. Back the blue, I support the police. Again, and I believe an increase in the sales tax is a small price to pay for our family and community safety. I think that a lot of people understand what's going on a lot more after this survey and so forth. And then again, on the people and why they oppose. Next slide, Madeline. I don't want a tax increase. They have management issues and high taxes. I don't need any new taxes. No tax increases. We need less police, not more. Again, you're going to have shades of that in there regarding just the political environment, and that is not uncommon in Colorado. And then also a typical senior, male, 65 plus, unaffiliated. The city's collecting enough already. They need to reallocate where it goes. This is common, especially from seniors. Live within your means and so forth, regardless of what they may learn. Like that final comment from this Republican female, 35 to 40, learn to manage the money you have. I also keep hearing a lot of officers have left in the last year due to toxic leadership. And again, I am just presenting the data there. This is just a couple of questions, but for the most part, the message is no more taxes, no matter what. I don't care what the money's going towards, and shades of defund the police and so forth, and so forth. But again, these comments are in the minority. We're talking less than 1/4 of likely voters compared to 74%, where you have half of them saying, I would definitely vote yes and support this. So final few slides, Madeline, on just some observations. And again, we did add a sunset clause in this to see if more people would be likely to support it, where if there was a sunset clause so the tax would expire after 10 years, would you be more likely to vote and approve it? 60% of respondents said doesn't make any difference to me. About 1/3 of voters said it was more likely to support. 13% said it makes no, I don't have opinion on this. And again, at the top, you can see among men, you may have a third saying, I am more likely to support if we put a sunset clause on this. And that's not uncommon, but again, I think there's broad support, obviously, for this across the board. But again, we didn't know that before we went into the field. But a sunset would get you a few more points if you felt it was prudent moving forward. Okay, final few slides, Madeline. Okay, final insights and observations. We always measure, as we say, the job approval rating, the image rating of the entity asking for the money, and whether or not the community thinks the entity does spend taxpayer money wisely. The police department passes all three of those with flying colors. We don't have any of those hangups or any of those problems. And what I mean by that is, and those are core things that really matter. Many times we will see an entity that has had either some sort of boondoggle or they've not had a good image of spending money wisely. All those, we're checking all those boxes. The police department is in good shape. Next slide, Madeline. The uninformed ballot test shows 2/3 of voters would vote for a tax increase for a half a cent and 1/4 would oppose it. Those are strong starting out numbers without question. And then after hearing those 8 different messages, support moves up to 74%. So it's a 10-point move. It's very strong. Next question, or next slide, excuse me. Top 3 messages: updating the arrest and report software. The town, unfortunately right now cannot communicate with other local area law enforcement on those things. Increasing the likelihood of patrol officers is obviously very popular. People understand that. They understand the limits of the current force, and having 4 or 5 full-time officers being able to address needs is needed with the growing town. And we saw that in the community survey as well. And a lot of people do like the idea of hiring a second female detective, without question. And the bottom line is even though those 3 are the top messages at 75%, people understand the need and they believe it. They don't need to be convinced. It's really more informative. Next slide. And again, voters were asked whether they would support the ballot measure, and the common themes again are, supporting their police department. There is definitely a need for it. And that's why I say voters are already there. This isn't necessarily an argument for some kind of revenue ask that is going to something that they don't either benefit from or need. And that's the other benefit here. The police department, everybody feels that they would benefit from this. So that passes what we call the what's in it for me test. And again, the voters that would vote no are very typical, and that's where their opinions stand, where now is not the time for a tax increase. But it is not along like the 50% line. It's really down more around a quarter. So with that, that is our survey. And we are happy to answer questions.
Is there any questions from the board for Mr. Flaherty or Ms. Van Hoek?
I have one question. We just did a ballot measure on this, and
Yep.
I guess in your opinion, why your numbers show there's a lot of support for this, and yet it failed at the ballot. So I don't know if you have any conjectures as to what happened.
Absolutely. Very good question. Absolutely. 1, I didn't think the ballot language was exactly easy to understand. 2, I think there was a lack of a campaign. And then 3, there were too many things on the ballot, or kind of like an open-ended area. What we tested here was very straightforward and 8 things and examples of exactly what this was going for. I don't think the effort that you guys put forward, excuse me, I'm not pointing any fingers here, but I think the community, when it was put to the ballot last time, didn't know all of the information about it. I think that from doing this survey, this is much more focused. People know how the money is going to be spent. They know why it's there. Where I think the other one was kind of more multi-purpose, and was trying to handle a lot of other things such as capital projects and so forth. This is straight up, here's how the money's going to be spent. This is the facts of where we are and how it's going to be needed. So I just think this is a little more focused, sir. And, and I'm not saying that the language either that is going to be written, perhaps if you decide to move forward with this, is going to be, look, it's always difficult to write clear ballot language. I just think that this is really more focused and people understand what they're getting, where the other one was kind of had a lot of different components to it that were not perhaps easy to understand.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Mr. Flaherty, and we will move on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everybody. I look forward to seeing you guys again in person very soon. Thank you.
I would like to make a comment, Mayor Wilson.
Go ahead.
I really feel that the difference in the last ballot to this one, as far as the community is concerned, is they felt that there was not enough money being allocated to make sure the need for the police department was being met. And that's the only difference that I see here.
Okay. Okay, ordinance number 21/2021. Mr. Ricci.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the second reading of the Mountain View Electric Association franchise agreement renewal. As we indicated last board meeting, this has to be read twice in order, pursuant to Colorado law, in order for it to go into effect. This time, should you pass this ordinance, it will in fact go into effect. This is not a reading. This would be for final passage. And since we've done this before, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Being our earlier discussion, is this a public hearing item?
Yes.
Okay. Since this is a public hearing item, I will open it up to public comment. Anyone who would like to speak for or against this ordinance, please let us know. Tina, do we have anyone wishing to speak online? Okay. Do we have anyone in person that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll leave the public hearing portion open momentarily and bring it back to the board for any questions or concerns. Okay, seeing no questions or concerns, I will go ahead and close the public hearing portion and bring it to the board for a motion.
I move to approve ordinance number 21/2021, an ordinance granting a franchise by the town of Monument to Mountain View Electric Association, Inc.
Second.
Is this only a 2 reading item?
It is.
Okay. So we have a motion, a second. Ms. Hogan, will you take roll, please?
Trustee Unruh.
Yes.
Was that a yes?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. Trustee LeKind.
Yes.
Trustee Romanello.
Yes.
Trustee Stevens.
Yes.
Trustee Clark.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes. That motion passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda, ordinance number 22/2021, an ordinance approving final plat and rezone for Tri-Lakes Monument Fire. Ms. Flynn.
Just waiting to get access to share the screen. Good evening. This is ordinance 2022-2021, final plat and rezone, Tri-Lakes Monument Fire, filing number 1. I don't know where that happened. The project site is off of Highway 105, adjacent to the current fire station. The site is 15.849 acres in size. It's a rezone from PID to PD. The current zoning designation for Tri-Lakes Monument Fire Protection District Station is PD, and the proposed lot is PID. Both lots need to have the same zoning designations to replat to one lot. Therefore, a rezone from PID to PD is being proposed. It is also a requirement of the town's municipal code, which indicates that any property subject to a previously approved PD, which includes PCD, PID, and PHID, that has not been platted and for which a certificate of occupancy has not been issued shall be rezoned to PD at no cost to the applicant. In the process, the current site is in the process of a remodel. The proposed lot is for a planned expansion of the existing fire station to bring the facility to meet current fire department standards and best practices. It is also a future fire department training area, and all applicable code standards are met. On May 12th, 2021, no one from the public spoke for or against the project. Planning Commission voted from 6-0 to recommend approval. The Planning Commission recommends approval of Ordinance 2022-2021 Final Plat and Rezone of Tri-Lakes Fire Monument Filing Number 1 based on the staff report findings that the proposed development complies with all standards and criteria for approval. And I do not believe Dean is here tonight, but I'm here to answer any questions if you have.
Does the board have any questions for Ms. Flynn at this time? Okay, hearing none, this is a public hearing item, so I will open it up to the public. Ms. Erickson, do we have any remote comments? Okay, do we have any comments from the public in person? Okay, we'll leave the public hearing portion open for a minute and bring it back to the board for further discussion.
Can you explain again the difference between PID and PD and why there's a need to have to?
Yes, it's planned industrial development.
Uh-huh.
And it's a zone that we currently do not use, so it has to be rezoned to planned development because it has not been platted or a certificate of occupancy hasn't been issued, so it has to be rezoned to PD. And the new code will be a different story, but currently that's what we have to use.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this item and bring it back to the board for a motion.
I make a motion to approve, let's see, we're on 22, number 22, 2021, an ordinance approving a final plat and rezoning for the Tri-Lakes Monument Fire filing number 1.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion in several seconds. Ms. Hogan, will you take roll?
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee LeKind?
Yes.
Trustee Unruh?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Trustee Clark? Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes. That motion passed 7-0. That takes us to item C, ordinance number 23, 2021. Final plat for Jackson Creek North filing. Ms. Flynn.
I'm sorry, I did not have my mic on. Shall I start over?
Please do.
Okay,
for-
I'm so sorry for that. The project site is 165 acres in size. It's Regency Park, PRD2 and PRD4, which is 2 dwelling units per acre and 4 dwelling units per acre. It's 378 single-family detached lots, which range in size from 7,150 square feet to 29,215 square feet. There'll be 41 tracks, which will consist of public utilities, open space, which contains a 10.2 acre site for a park, and 34.1 acres of open space, which is mainly mouse habitat. There'll be drainage tracks as well. All tracks and roadways are dedicated to the town of Monument and maintained by Triview Metro District. Triview Metro District will also provide water and wastewater services for all development within Jackson Creek North filings. Land was dedicated to Lewis Palmer School District 38, and all applicable code standards are met. On May 12th, 2021, 8 members from the public had a few concerns, such as the density in the town of Monument and what plans may be in play for more schools. Residents would like to see more parks. If the water districts within the town of Monument have enough water to supply to the new homes and their current users. Why is Cloverleaf Road not connecting to Higbee Road? Zoning for the roads in the area. Concerns regarding traffic and what type of traffic control devices will be installed within the subdivision and Higbee Road, Harness Road and Higbee Road intersection design, and concerns regarding the overall town of Monument's growth. And the Planning Commission recommended vote of 6-0 for approval. The Planning Commission recommends approval of Ordinance 23-2021 final plats of Jackson Creek North filings number 3 through 6, based on the staff report findings that the proposed development complies with all standards and criteria for approval. And Mike Taylor is here from Creekside Developers to answer any questions.
No presentation, though?
No presentation.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board for Ms. Flynn or Mr. Taylor?
Yes, I noticed that there was no traffic study. Was that omitted or?
No, there was a traffic study. These are for a plat, approval, not for site plan approval. The site plan was approved administratively because it's in Regency Park. So there was a traffic study that was completed for the site plans.
This is a public hearing item. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to speak on this item? Ms. Erickson? Okay, Ms. Hatfield, will you let me know when she's on? Ms. Hatfield, would you like to comment on this item?
Hi, I have a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I've been trying to follow along with this one, but my question is about the traffic and I didn't know to go back and look at another document. So my biggest concern is about what happens to Higbee Road. I'm not able to read the engineering documents very well. And what I'm concerned about is that traffic already is kind of crazy on Higbee Road. And I know right now it's owned by the county, but it goes up to 70 miles an hour. And there are blind spots where the road goes, where, you know, cars can be hidden right before they pop up and intersect with where Harness Road comes out onto Higbee Road, for example. And so what my question is with the way the development is laid out, is there room with all the lots that are planned for right along Higbee Road, is there enough room in there so that in the future, if turn lanes, you know, deceleration and acceleration lanes need to be added to slow down the traffic or make room for cars to enter safely onto that road, is there going to be room for that to happen? Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Erickson, do we have any other online comments? Okay. Do we have anybody in person that would like to comment? Okay. Ms. Flynn, would you or Mr. Taylor like to address the concern?
Yes, I can. Higbee Road is currently being looked at to be annexed into the town, and Triview will be doing improvements to this road, and there will be many roundabouts installed, and the lanes going in and out of Harness Drive will be addressed so people can go in and out safely.
Okay.
So along those lines, you're saying that on Higbee Road, there are plans to put a roundabout for Harness Road as it connects to Higbee? Is that correct?
Harness. I believe it was at Harness and Higbee Road. Most of the intersections off of Higbee Road will be turned into roundabouts in the future. Potentially, that's what we're looking at right now.
Okay, and that includes Bowstring as well? Because that's connecting, I was looking, it looks like the only two connections from this development to Higbee Road was through Bowstring and Harness. Did I miss one?
Nope, we're correct. It used to be Cloverleaf, but we changed that. So Bowstrings and Harness will be connecting to Higbee Road.
And you'll be using roundabouts for that?
Correct. That's the design as now. I don't know if anything's going to change, but currently that's the design.
And you mentioned there was a traffic study. What was,
Yep.
Can you share the traffic study? Have you?
Yes, the gentleman's here tonight that wrote the traffic study. If you'd like to go to the podium.
Can you make sure there's a green light on that at the base of that microphone? Oh, there's not one? Oh, never mind.
Good evening, Jeff Hodgson with LSC Transportation Consultants. And we prepared the traffic report for the development. It basically includes current data, projections, estimates of traffic operations. It contains a detailed table of improvements for the study area, which is basically Higbee on the north, Jackson Creek on west, and going down to the south end of the development. So it's got a detailed table with all the turn lanes and traffic control recommendations in it. We've actually have it broken out by phase. So for each of the filings, it has a different set of illustrations and traffic analysis for each of the phases. So it breaks it down by phase. And so essentially it's pretty detailed study, and it looks at all the major intersections. I think our study showed 4 lanes for Higbee Road. At the time this was prepared, we weren't aware of the Triview study that was going on, or we weren't aware of the results of what Triview had come up with, which sounds like roundabouts on Higbee Road. So, but so
Okay.
we didn't show roundabouts on Higbee, but that's the Triview. It's one of those studies that's it's fairly new, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
I'm not hearing your findings.
Well, there's a lot of them. Do you have any specific questions, or like it details all of the different turn lanes and traffic control recommendations. Basically, the findings are the road system can accommodate the traffic from the development with the recommendations presented in the report. It's a very large report, so. But that's the overall finding, is that the development's traffic can be accommodated.
And Mr. Foreman, is the developer agreed to their portion of those recommendations?
Debbie, I think they have agreed to that, haven't they?
Yes, they have. They submitted an agreement to the town to review currently.
Yeah,
Help with that.
we're going to have a PIA with them and with Triview also at the same time.
Yep.
Okay.
And given the fact this is the Higbee Road belongs to El Paso County, has that been approved, or are all these changes authorized through them?
currently it does belong to El Paso County, but we're in the midst of annexing it into the town of Monument. Once it's annexed into the town of Monument, we will have an IGA with Triview for Triview to take over the maintenance and approval of all access onto that road.
Is there any concern with El Paso County not wanting it annexed?
No, El Paso County wants us to annex it. They are working with their town attorneys and our town attorney to get that process completed. Debbie, how close are we to that?
I answered Jennifer Irvine's questions over the weekend, and hopefully we'll get something this week from her.
Right.
And the county did not provide any comments because we're in the midst of annexing the road.
Right. So they won't. The plan is that they won't be controlling access to Higbee Road. It will be the town of Monument and Triview.
Is there a reason why we don't have a copy of these findings?
Because it was, go ahead.
This was a plat, not a site plan approval, but I could provide, I don't usually provide the traffic study to the board to review. I usually put findings in my presentation when it's a site plan.
Okay, thank you. In case I had not, we'll close the public hearing portion of this. Further discussion from the board or a motion?
I would like to say that I think that this has been handled very well by the town manager and his staff. I appreciate the thoroughness.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 23-2021 and ordinance approving final plats for Jackson Creek North filing numbers 3 through 6.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Ms. Hogan, will you take roll?
Trustee Unruh,
Yes.
Trustee Clark,
Yes.
Trustee Romanello,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee LeKind.
Yes.
Thank you.
That motion passes 7-0. That now takes us to ordinance number 5E and 5D. We're going to run this a little different. These ordinances are together, although we are required to vote on them separately. So what we will do is we will have our staff presentation. We will open up the public hearing for both items, D and E. And then we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for a vote on these items separately. So we are now on ordinance number 25, 2021, an ordinance repealing Title 16 and 17 of the Monument Municipal Code and reenacting the same with amendments. Ms. Flynn.
Martin Landers with Plan Tools is virtual tonight, and Jerry Dahl with Murray Dahl, Barry, and Renaud LLP is here in person to present the Monument Land Development Code and Zoning Map Update. And I'll let them take it on.
Terrific. Pardon me. And there's no green light, so that's good. I'm Jerry Dahl. I'm the live presenter for our consultant team with Martin Landers, I think, standing by, and we'll confirm in a minute that he's been able to get connected, because we do have a PowerPoint we want to use to be the structure for the short presentation that we have. And to confirm, we have opened the public hearing on both ordinances. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor? Thank you. Because they go together. What we are doing here is repealing and reenacting the subdivision and zoning chapters or titles in the code and replacing that with a single land use code that will be Title 18. And in addition, we're redoing the zoning map, which is the way you exercise zoning, and that's how you memorialize what things can happen where, just for lack of a better way of saying it more in a more complicated way. And I realize that members of the board and most of the audience will know that, but it's a public hearing, and I want to make sure we sort of understand the scope of what's going on here. The land use code is really what controls development in the town. You've already had one application here tonight that was reviewed according to your land use code, and that's what we'll be working on here. Martin's here because I see the land development code up. By way of introduction, I'll also want to describe what our schedule here is for these two ordinances. We'll give a single staff report, which is Martin and myself and another member of the consultant team on both ordinances. And we'll take you through the PowerPoint slides for that purpose. Then we'll take questions from the board to the extent you have any. Then public comment, and that public comment can be on either ordinance because as I mentioned, they're really an integrated package. So we want to hear from the public on the whole works all at the same time. After that, and public comments have been closed, we'll answer any questions that might have been raised by the public, just as you did earlier. And then we'll move into action mode for motions from the board. And because it's a fairly complicated code process, we'll have probably a couple of things we'll need to fix that we'll find during the course of this hearing. And I'll keep track of those and be able to incorporate those into a motion so that we can be done. Martin, if you're there, what I will be doing is serving as the in-person master of ceremonies, and I'm on some of these slides, Martin's on some of them, and so we hand off to each other. And if we lose him, I hope we don't, because then it's all me. So with any luck, he's there. Martin, you there to go ahead and take it away?
I am. I'm here, Jerry. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, good evening, Mayor and trustees. As Jerry mentioned, I'm Martin Landers. I'm the project director for this Monument Land Development Code and Zoning Map project. I couldn't quite hear if Jerry mentioned or not, but we also have on the call Jody Flory with Cornerstone Geospatial Consulting, and she'll also be presenting a small portion of tonight's presentation as well. What I'd like to do is begin with an overview of the project, why there's a need to update the town's development regulations, and then how the proposed land development code and zoning map update address a number of key planning objectives. First, let me give you some background, if I could. The town zoning map was last updated in 2011. The zoning code itself was originally updated, originally adopted actually back in 1997, with a variety of piecemeal updates since that time. The subdivision regulations are a bit more recent. They were done in 2016, but it was in 2017 when the town adopted a new comprehensive plan that really provided the vision and a call to action for updating the town's zoning and subdivision codes. The first implementation action actually in the comprehensive plan is to update the town's zoning ordinance and sections of the subdivision ordinance. And so that's why we're here. That's what we've been involved with since September of 2019 when we started the project. Our timeline tracks with the DOLA grant requirements to complete this project by the end of this month. There were 4 project phases involved: code diagnosis, code update, map update, and then where we're at right now, which is the code map adoption phase. There was an advisory committee established with 2 town board members, 2 planning commissioners, representatives from HBA, the Home Builders Association, and town staff. These folks reviewed each code chapter it was completed. Those chapters were then updated based on committee feedback. We then consolidated and further refined them with planning commission recommendations into what you have now before you, which is the May 2021 draft. Since January, we've also been concurrently working on updating the zoning map with what is now version 18, primarily involving refinements based on research associated with existing plan developments. As I mentioned, we're on schedule. In early May, the town board held a joint work session with the Planning Commission. In mid-May, the town hosted a public open house event where we had a couple dozen people come by and take a look at a variety of different exhibits and give us some feedback. And then on May 12th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on the proposed code and the zoning map and adopted a resolution recommending their approval. This is our scope of work for the project, boiled down into a set of 4 bullet points. First of all is to diagnose the town's existing land use regulations and identify what works, what doesn't work, and what's missing. Secondly, to consolidate, update, and create a user-friendly, legally sound set of land use regulations. Third, to update the town's official zoning map to reflect any new or renamed zoning districts. And then fourth, to provide targeted opportunities for public input and development community engagement. During the code diagnosis stage is where we did a detailed review of the existing zoning and subdivision regulations. We also held interviews with representatives of the development community, business owners, and other key stakeholders. And at that time, we also had a public workshop to identify preferences on addressing a variety of selected issues. So here's our key takeaways, several of which we'll highlight during tonight's presentation. The code itself was very confusing, the code structure, very difficult to navigate. There was very complex and what we consider redundant development review procedures and submittal requirements. There was quite a bit of a reliance on planned development zoning versus working with traditional zoning districts, and a number of complications in administering the prior PD zoning, which I'm sure you've heard from staff on. We had a need to clarify the Regency Park zoning status. We got into the definitions. There's a variety of duplications of definitions, development standards throughout the code. I think there are probably at least 6 or 7 different places where there were separate sections just on definitions. In general, there's a lack of defined uses as well. So it's very difficult to understand what a particular use might actually be for, leaving staff to try to interpret with the applicant what was allowed or not allowed within a particular zoning district. A number of outdated standards, such as school land dedication requirements, which were also redundant with what the school district's been doing. There was a need for additional use standards, such as group homes and the legal requirements associated with those. And then finally on this list, the content-based sign regulations, which Jerry will get into here in a few minutes and explain what that means. So one of our first project objectives was to address the concern that was consistently raised about the current zoning and subdivision regulations, and that's with its overall functionality and the need to eliminate a lot of the conflicting and inconsistent provisions. To organize requirements into appropriate sections, and then to enhance its usability. So at the outset of the project, we agreed the best approach to improving the functionality of the town's development regulations, and here we're primarily talking about the zoning code as well as the subdivision code, was to prepare what's known as a unified development code. So for this reason, many communities have consolidated their development regulations into one document, which eliminates redundancies between different codes and uses tables and graphics wherever possible to organize and clarify code requirements. The proposed Monument Land Development Code, which will be Title 18 of the town's municipal code, repealing and replacing Title 16 zoning and Title 17 subdivision, is formatted into this new document and is structured to include 6 chapters and 3 appendices. The 6 chapters are general provisions, subdivision, zoning, supplemental use standards, development standards, signs, and definitions. And then there's 3 appendices. The first one includes all of the submittal checklists for the various types of land use applications, and including the update of the current development review application form. The second appendix is the model public improvements agreement. And then the third appendix is a model small cell facility master license agreement. So in one document, you have all of the town's development regulations, along with the various agreements and checklists and application forms necessary to work through with an applicant, the various types of applications that come through the community. So we'd like to highlight a few key code issues and then how they were addressed. And so, for example, there are many uses for which we found, again, that They were either inconsistently defined or not defined at all within the current zoning code. And we also, as I mentioned, we found them scattered throughout the current regulations. So this next slide here is an example from actually the first page of the definitions chapter, which is the final chapter in the code. All these definitions are assembled glossary style as the last chapter, New Development Code, for ease of reference. So you can just go to one place to find the definitions. They've also been reviewed and updated as appropriate with many new definitions to capture each particular use type. So all the various uses that are listed within the code have a definition. And you'll see there's other locations as well, but in particular, there's two particular chapters, definitions and the sign regulations, where you'll see we use graphics to provide a visual aid to improve the usability of the code. Improving usability is one of the really key components to this update. This is from the town's sign regulations. This is chapter 6 of the code. And as I mentioned, what we found is it's really much easier to understand sign codes or any other components of the codes when we use tables and graphics to decide various particular standards, or in this case, sign types. So this is one of 10 pages of district standards for various sign types in the new chapter 6, the sign regulations. Beyond the editorial and stylistic changes, though, there's one major substantive issue with updating the sign regulations and ensuring that they are content neutral. And this is where I'll turn it back to Jerry for a few moments to talk about content neutrality and how that's been addressed.
Terrific. Thanks, Martin. You'll remember the slide that Martin just showed was helpful because you'll notice it had diagrams, and there were two types of sign on that diagram: awning sign, canopy sign, as an example. And that's a really good kind of segue for what I'm going to, and you see that there. You'll notice it says sign type upper left. Underneath that it says awning sign. It shows what an awning sign is. And then underneath that's a canopy sign, what a canopy sign is. So now we all know the difference between an awning sign and a canopy sign. And over on the right, it says, okay, if you want to do an awning sign, here are the rules of the game for awning signs: size, location, etc. And we've done that for all the various sign types. And Martin, you can go to the next slide. One of our objectives, of course, was to update the sign regulations to comply with law. And one of the laws we have to comply with are decisions of the U.S. Supreme Court. For years, for decades, cities and counties have regulated signs by describing what was on the sign, right? So you'd have, you'd have sign regulations for construction signs, real estate signs, political signs. I represent a number of cities, and the city code used to always have political signs, no bigger than this, maybe placed, X days before the election and have to be removed Y days after. We all remember those restrictions. And the sign codes would have done that for decades. That was fine, but in 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court handed down a decision involving a property actually a church in Gilbert, California, which is a suburb of Phoenix. And this church was putting out its signs, and those kinds of signs are regulated by the city of Gilbert's sign code. And the Supreme Court, when it finally got to the Supreme Court, said, to save you all of the effort of having to read through all that, said, look, if you have to read what's on the sign to know how it's regulated, you're reading speech and you're regulating the sign based upon what it's saying. So you're regulating speech. And that is a First Amendment problem because we do not regulate speech. We have free speech. And you can only regulate speech if you've got a really compelling governmental reason to do so. And eliminating clutter, believe it or not, and highway safety, distracted drivers, isn't enough, which came as a giant shock to every local government in the country because they had been relying on being able to say, it's a construction sign, you can do this. And so we all kind of took a deep breath and said, oh my God, what are we going to do? Are we going to regulate signs? And Martin and I were in the middle actually of revising a sign code when that decision came down, and we had to stop and go back. And we lit upon, as most others did, the idea of regulating signs by their physical type. And we thought, is that going to work? And as it turns out, that's actually really easy to do. Wall sign, awning sign, roof sign, canopy sign, wave banner. These, you've all seen them, and plant a stake in the ground. It's a wave banner. And so we actually got around the Supreme Court's decision rather easily in being able to regulate signs by sign type rather than what it says on the sign. We managed to, I think, dodge a bullet there. But in any event, that is one of the things that we have done. And if anything, I think it actually made regulating signs easier because people are more visual. And if you give them the visual depiction of the canopy sign, especially if you're a business owner, you really want to know how much square foot you've got to advertise your business and on what means you can do that. So if you have a sign budget for that little strip center, you know that you've got some choices about how to spend it, where you're going to spend it, and on what types of sign. So it doesn't regulate signs anymore heavily. It just regulates them in the way that is okay with the U.S. Supreme Court. So we can go on to the next slide. Another objective that Martin mentioned earlier was to streamline the code, make it easier to read, easier to work on, easier to operate. And we said, we will do that, and we will refine, in addition to the code, a bunch of your checklists. Well, let's see some examples of how we've done that. And Martin, you go to the next slide. Okay, this is the review procedures chart. And the sad truth is that it's my favorite chart in the book. And it's sad because why would I have a favorite chart? That's sad by itself. But we're proud of this chart, and it does a lot of work, which is why it is my all kidding aside, it's why it is my favorite chart in the book. And if you're in the development community, if you're the applicant, if you're the planning commission, if you're the board of trustees, you will be looking at this chart a lot. This chart is kind of the junction box for how land use applications get operated and get reviewed and approved in the community. And we're not inventing any new categories here, but we're putting them all in one place. This chart replaces a whole lot of prose text in the existing code. And here's its structure. Down the left, you see all of the various kinds of things you can apply for as a land use change, all the way from a site plan, annexation, sign permit, all the way down to vested rights on the bottom. It's not alphabetical, by the way, and in categories. Across the top, you see the stops that your development application has to make at the town. And at a glance, if you are applying for a temporary use permit, for example, that's about the fifth line down, you can see what you've got to do. You've got a required pre-app with the staff. You've got a completeness review. That's what CR is. There's a little legend. So they check to make sure your application is complete so that we don't do a wrong rock. You get to the planning commission and it's somehow it's determined to be incomplete. Actually, in this one, you don't go to planning commission. There's no referral. Is there an administrative approval? Yes, there is, but there's an appeal to the board of trustees. So that's what the X's are meetings, the H's are public hearings, the A's are appeals. So you can see at a glance what you've got to do to get a temporary use permit. Let's make something more complex. And one of the things that are probably looked at the most carefully and heavily here, preliminary PUD. That's about halfway down. You'll notice you have to do a pre-application with staff. We check your application to make sure it's complete. It's referred out to referral agencies, utilities, the county, the stormwater, all the fire, all the agencies you always refer a big development application to. It isn't administratively approved. There's no AD. So unfortunately, Mike and company can't just say yes to this. And he's probably glad it's not his job, it's yours. There's 2 hearings. So this is the full boat in terms of review, as it should be. So there's a hearing in front of the Planning Commission, PC, there's a hearing in front of the Board of Trustees. And over on the right is the code section where these kinds of applications are discussed. So if I'm an applicant for any one of these things, this chart tells me a whole lot about what I have to do. It tells me where I've got to go, and it gives me code sites. It's a lot of stuff all in one page, and that's why you can see it's one of my favorites. Let's look at the next slide, which is the checklist, because we mentioned earlier that we would also refine those. And you have checklists presently, but we've refined them, and we've created a checklist for just about every one of the application types we just saw. In addition to the chart, if I want to come in and say, okay, I need to do preliminary plat, staff will hand me this, and we'll check the boxes that I need to submit material on. This one's designed for preliminary plat, so there's one for each kind of application. There will be a different one for temporary use permit. There will be a different one for variance, for example. The first 4 or 5 boxes are always going to be the same. We want your application form. We want, instead of a preliminary plat fee, to be, for example, temporary use permit fee, but the fee, proof that you own the property, kind of important, narrative. What do you want to do here? What's your plan? And a letter signed by whoever it is that does own the property, if you're a developer representative, which is common. And that's fine, and that's basic. The rest of it is specific to preliminary plats, and it's a pretty long list, but preliminary plats, as we just saw, it's a pretty complicated application, pretty important. I'm sure that the traffic study, yes, you'll notice the traffic impact analysis or study, that's about 6 from the bottom. You heard that tonight. That's one of the requirements for preliminary plat. You won't see that probably for temporary use permit. I don't have that checklist in front of me. But in any event, it's a real good summary of what's required. It's obviously not the whole code, but it really is, again, good guideposts and saves you a lot of trouble. Martin, I think that we can go to the next project objective and talk about uses in zone districts.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Well, Jerry mentioned the benefit of using charts to diagnose the various review procedures. The same is true for evaluating permitted and conditional uses within each zone district. Whether we're talking about consistency between similar uses, or if certain uses are missing, or if certain uses need to be updated. As we know, times change. There may not be a reason to list confectionaries and tailoring anymore, which are 2 of the uses in your current code, while microbreweries and live workspaces and other types of more recent developments need to be accommodated. So this is an excerpt from 1 page out of 7 pages of use charts that categorize uses into commercial, industrial, institutional, recreational, residential, utilities, and other use categories. Along the top, the zoning districts are listed. In this case, the 10 standard zoning districts. There is another set of these charts for the Regency Park zoning districts. Each use is listed along the left-hand column with its use type: permitted uses, conditional uses, accessory and temporary uses. These are all identified in the boxes for each zoning district. Just as a note, one change that we made is you currently have something called a use by special review. Those are now being called conditional uses, which are actually, it's a little bit more typical term that we find that's a little bit easier to understand for most applicants. Now, as you can see, it'd be very simple to update these charts over time by adding a new row for a new use, or identifying where that use should be allowed either by right or with conditions, or alternatively, deleting a use or changing its use type as also may be warranted. We've also highlighted a few ways the organization and functionality of new code has been simplified and improved, either through eliminating these conflicting definitions, consolidating procedures into a single chart, or adding illustrations as an aid to interpreting various sign provisions. Organizing zoning and subdivision standards into appropriate sections is also a very important consideration. So here we have a chart from Chapter 3 zoning that organizes various zoning district standards. So in this case, we're looking at, on the left-hand column, minimum lot area, minimum lot width, minimum front yard, minimum side yard, minimum rear yard, and then maximum height. And then those particular standards for each of those categories are shown in the box in the right-hand column. The functionality of this district, which is residential attached, formerly known as multifamily, has been enhanced by adding standards for various forms of development, housing types, even non-residential uses that could be permitted within this particular district. We then cross-reference the additional development standards. So for example, we've got development standards for parking, landscaping, lighting, site design, and all of these are hosted in Chapter 5. And so we've referenced those. But when you go to the zoning district, you can find all this information. It's very simple to and easy to understand. It's presented in a format that's easy to understand, but it's also been updated so that it's comprehensive. That pretty well takes care of our overview on the land development regulations themselves. Certainly there's a number of other objectives we can go through and talk about other highlights or other items. But we thought at this point what we might do is just turn to the official zoning map and the preparation and creation of that official zoning map and how that's been done, which has been very important because in order for the new land development code to be implemented, we have to create a zoning map that reflects those new and renamed zoning districts that we have listed in the land development code. So to begin with, this is the town's current zoning map. As I mentioned earlier, this was last updated in 2011, which is over 10 years ago. We reviewed annexation, plan development, and rezoning ordinances that were adopted since 2011 to confirm rezonings and any boundary changes that have occurred since then. And we found a number of them. We also took a look where needed at ordinances prior to 2011, where zoning questions arose as we were doing this. We found a number of errors and issues that needed to be addressed as we began that process of developing the new zoning map. So this is the proposed zoning map. As I mentioned earlier, this is version 18. The way we did this is we began by using the El Paso County GIS parcel information and guidance from our administrative zoning transition program that we put together to prepare a new interactive official zoning map. And in just a few minutes, I'll have Jody show you how that interactive map works. But a few things first. The majority of the town's 4,000 plus land parcels are directly transitioning from an existing zoning district to a similar new zoning district. For example, all of the R3 multifamily will become residential attached. The one mobile home park will still be mapped as mobile home park district. All the B business district parcels will be mapped downtown business because all those business parcels are connected to the downtown. All the C1 that you currently have will be shown as the new commercial center district. The majority of the 4 residential single family districts will all be mapped into 2 single family districts, and all the Regency Park districts themselves retain the same designation under a new Regency Park overlay zone. There's one parcel that we're recommending to be in the new large lot residential zone district due to its location and size. We're also recommending that town, county, state, and federal government parcels that are located outside of Regency Park be remapped to the new public zone district. You'll also notice on this particular zoning map compared to the old map that we created a table that lists the existing plan developments, their map identification number, and approval information. That table has been updated since your packet was prepared with confirmation of several plan developments in Regency Park. With that change, this is the map we are asking you to consider adopted. It's dated June 7th, 2021. As I mentioned, it's known as version 18. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jody to highlight the interactive functionality of the new zoning map, which means I'm going to need to stop screen sharing for just a moment.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me and see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Great. So this map was developed to help citizens and the town staff visualize the new zoning and confirm zoning on their individual property or other properties of interest around the town without trying to read a paper map or a PDF map where they can't get a lot of detail. This helps users be able to zoom in and isolate an individual property and determine how it was rezoned. So the way this starts is with a splash screen in the corner that shows just a brief detail about the most recent update to the map, and then a little detail about instructions on how to use it. It's pretty simplistic. The main tool is this search bar up here where you can enter an address, a PIN number, or an owner's name and isolate a specific property within Monument. The search window is set up to search only addresses found within Monument, but there is a toggle here so that if the address is not found, it can be a different geocoder can be used to isolate that address. So I'll just go ahead and demonstrate, as you type, it will give you candidates, matching address candidates within Monument. And I'll just choose the town hall here as an example. So as you enter the address, it will go ahead and zoom into the property and open a pop-up window. And that pop-up will display the new zoning class at the top. And then it also lists what the old zoning class was. It also provides a link to the El Paso County Assessor website so that you can confirm that that is the property of interest. There is also some information about the owner, and then also the assessor's land use designation that they use for assessment purposes. So that's the gist of it. There also are some other tools that you can use to interact with the map. There is a legend here, so if you're interested in what the colors on the map mean, there's this legend button will explain that. There's a layer toggle, so if you're trying to look at a property and the zoning districts are in the way, we can actually just turn them off so that you can see the aerial imagery better. If you're not interested in viewing the aerial imagery, you can just look at a street map to help orient yourself in town, or switch back to imagery. There is a share feature so that you can just share a link to the map, a simple link, and it can be tweeted or posted on Facebook. And there's also a print function so that you could print out a copy of what you see on the screen. And that's the gist of the map. Are there any questions on how it is used or the data?
We're going to hold off on questions at this time.
Oh, sure. Okay, well then I'll just hand it back to Martin.
Okay, well, thank you, Jody. And if I could get screen share functionality again. Let's see where to go. Oh. Jerry, did you want to take our next slide?
Yeah, let me do that. And we're almost at the end, believe it or not. We've buzzed through this, so we'll look forward to questions. We did send out a public notice on this for this hearing, and here's a copy of it. It went to what, 3,500 or so owners? Is that right, Martin?
Yeah, there were approximately 3,500 postcards mailed to individual property owners. The notification also included an advertisement in our community news, and then we had public hearing notices published in both the Colorado Springs Gazette and the Tri-Lakes Tribune.
Terrific. And we needed to do that because, of course, public hearing, we want to make sure everyone that had any interest at all in this got notice of it. I want to make a couple points about the process for the adoption of the zoning map. It's a legislative process. And, we have two ordinances in front of you. One ordinance adopts the code, all the words. The other ordinance adopts this map that Jody just showed you. But they're both legislative. And for rezoning on property, you're used to adopting an ordinance to rezone, but you're familiar with it being called quasi-judicial because it's a single parcel of property. The other way rezoning takes place, and it's much more rare, but we're doing it tonight, which is a legislative large area rezoning. And when you think about it, it's a pretty large area. It's the entire town, and you're allowed to do that. The law is very clear that you're allowed to do that as a legislative act rather than a quasi-judicial one. And so that's the process you're undertaking here. I'd point out on that map that the vast majority of the changes are really renaming what the zone district is for parcels of property. So Martin mentioned that what was present or formerly business, I think, Martin, is now
downtown business.
Thank you, Martin. You have to watch for the hand gestures. I'm kidding.
Yeah, you're off to the left just a little too far, Jerry.
Okay, darn. All right, I'll try to move to the right then a little bit down here. There you go. But in any event, that's a renaming. We didn't rezone that property per se. We've really just renamed it. And the standards are largely the same, although we have tuned them up. But nevertheless, it's a new zoning designation, and so you need to act legislatively. So that's the vast majority. There's a little bit of rezoning, true rezoning in the sense of moving from a certain zone district to another one that isn't equivalent. Primarily public properties. A lot of them weren't zoned or were improperly zoned. And so we've zoned those, Martin, into a zone district called what?
I'm sorry, what was the question, Jerry?
Man, Martin, you and I, we've got to work on our timing, really. What's the name for the public property zone district?
The public zone district.
Okay, well, see, it was that easy. But anyway, so we rezoned those and actually gave them zoning. I think there were one or two parcels that actually needed to have their zoning corrected, and Martin mentioned that. So that's been our process to get through both the code and the map. I think, Martin, at this point, we're ready for board questions unless you have anything more we need to add on the staff report.
I don't have anything else to add, Jerry.
Okay. Thank you. Debbie is going to pass out, though, a document. You have it in your packets called the Summary of Modifications. And I was remiss in not addressing this. You have it in your packet. She's giving you a hard copy. And so those of you that are members of the board that are online, you'll have that in your packet. And let me spend a minute or two just on the summary of modifications. Yeah.
Ms. Flynn, can we clarify, was that sent separately from the board packet?
Emailed to the board today.
So our remote board members, this was an email from Ms. Flynn earlier today. It is not in the board packet specifically.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. I was unaware, but that's good to know. On the zoning map, the product you have is we're done with that. And the ordinance that's designated for adoption of the zoning map is ready to go, and we're all set. You can appreciate that for the zoning code, that's the zoning and subdivision regulations, that's pretty extensive. We got recommendations from the Planning Commission, which we were able to incorporate into the text. But we, subsequent to the Planning Commission meeting, and they recommended approval of both ordinances, subsequent to the Planning Commission meeting, we sat down with the Home Builders Association, who had reviewed the zoning code document in detail and gave us some really good recommendations for primarily technical changes, but things that were of importance to them. We summarized all those in this 2-page summary of modifications. I'll describe it in a moment, but how that fits in is this. When we do the ordinance approving a code, the ordinance will approve the code as set forth in Exhibit A to the ordinance, which is Exhibit A would be this whole code book, the new one, and including Exhibit B, the summary of modifications, because these are technical changes that have come up since Planning Commission review and weren't able to be plugged into Exhibit A. But the whole of that will be the amended code. And I've got a couple little corrections on the summary modifications that we'll get to when we get into action mode and have a motion. But that document really corrects the code. You'll notice that there are some changes. In fact, I'll just describe them now. There are some changes to terminology in Chapter 1. We had we needed to indicate a meeting for the Planning Commission on minor subdivision review rather than a hearing. Basically terminology. The same thing is true in Chapter 2. Chapters 3 and the Appendix 1 changes are things that were suggested to us by the Home Builders Association. So they're pretty detailed. As you can see, it's change line X to read line X plus 1, that kind of thing. And I'm happy to answer any questions on them. I'm also going to ask to add a change to Chapter 3. Martin showed you the zoning use chart. Because we've renamed some districts, it was important to retain the treatment of the outpatient substance abuse facility in a single small zone district. And I'll make a change when we get to it just to add to that summary modifications to achieve that. So that's a quick thumbnail sketch of the exhibit. And I think we've gone through the staff report we need to. Be happy to take questions from the board and then the public. And after the public, I'll answer any questions they may raise, and then we can get into action mode.
Okay, do we have questions from the board? Okay, I have one question. Mr. Dolan, I know you were just getting ready, or you had somewhat addressed it. The change in zoning, some of the board members were here at the time, but we went through quite a fiasco with the methadone clinic. And now we hear discussions of the state and Denver talking about places like safe injection sites. How has that changed, and how are we protected against those coming into town?
Terrific. I appreciate that question, and I can answer it in a couple of ways. You are right. The state legislature, I looked at a bill that didn't pass, but a bill that was run last year, I think, that would have similar to the state's mandates around affordable housing, state mandates around group homes for developmentally disabled, mentally ill, and others. The state every now and again will come up with mandates that are really local zoning mandates. And this bill was one of those. It did not pass, but it was one that would require local governments to at least make available zoning for these sites, and that bill didn't pass. So as a statutory town, you're still, you have to listen to what the state legislature says and comply with it. But what the legislature tried to do, and likely will do again if they have the opportunity, will be to say, you've got to provide an avenue for various kinds of uses, that being one. What the town did previously here was to zone that particular use into a single zone district where there's one piece of property that's presently developed. It's down at Baptist Road, and say that's the one place those facilities can be, basically an outpatient facility for alcohol dependency or drug dependency in outpatient services, not providing meals or lodging, so not a residential setting. And you did that. And in that zone district down there at Baptist Road, those uses, or that use presently under your code, is a permitted use. We renamed that zone district, and that's one of the changes I want to make. It got renamed to, let's see, it got renamed to Commercial Center, which is fine, but there's other property named Commercial Center now in the new map, primarily up along the highway. So there's more area where those uses would be allowed. The change I'm suggesting, because we needed to pick this up, is to continue to restrict the ability for those uses to locate, to the extent the state mandates it, to a very small or to a definable zone district area, and to control whether or not it's allowed there. So the change that I'll be suggesting is to edit that zoning use chart to, right now, it allows the use as a use by right. What I'm suggesting is that it be made a conditional use and only in the business campus zone district, which is a small zone district that does not have any property in it now. That means two things: that I would need to acquire property and get it rezoned to business campus. And secondly, I would need to apply for and receive a conditional use permit, which is similar to your existing system for special use permits. Conditional use permit, as Martin mentioned, by its own name, is you can put conditions on it and you're not required to grant it. So that's different than a use by right, which is what those uses are now, again, in a very small area. So the net result of the code change that I will suggest be a part of the summary modifications is to classify, and what we're calling them now are outpatient substance facility, outpatient substance facility from a commercial center to business campus, meaning that it's in a very small area. Right now, you don't have any land zone in that area, but you could. And when zoned to that zone district, it would still need to apply for a conditional use permit.
So as we move forward this evening, will we approve just contingent on your changes?
Yes.
Approve with.
Exactly. When we get to action mode and there's a motion, for example, to approve the ordinance approving a code document, which is, there's too many twos in all these ordinance numbers, but 2021, whatever the code ordinance is, it'll be approve that ordinance with the attached Exhibit A, which is the new code book, and as corrected by Exhibit B, which is the summary of modifications you're holding in front of you, as corrected on the record tonight. And the correction on the record would be this correction that I've just now read, to move in the schedule of uses section 1803-380, and I'll repeat this for the motion when we get there, move the conditional use for outpatient substance facility from commercial center to business campus. And that'll be a part of the motion. It then becomes a part of Exhibit B. Exhibit B becomes a part of the code book. The code book gets adopted by the ordinance and it's in place.
Okay. Additional questions from the board?
How would any of this change if we go to home rule and are not a statutory town?
Excellent question. How that would change is that would give you, let's assume you went ahead and had this structure, because you'll need an updated code book. As a home rule municipality, you've got the ability to ignore state statutes on matters of exclusively local concern. And I'll finish the answer in this way. You can sometimes ignore state statutes on matters of mixed state and local concern. You all kind of know the home rule short course. And you're stuck with state statutes if they are on a matter of statewide concern. So the legislature would have to say, in whatever bill they run, that it's a matter of statewide concern that these facilities have to be permitted somewhere. Now, I'll tell you this, I was the general counsel for the Colorado Municipal League for six years, and half of what we do at the Municipal League, or they still do, and I did when I was there, is defend the home rule power and defend the power of home rule municipalities to make their own restrictions and regulations and not be bound by what the state says about matters that really are local. And without taking too much time on it, I'll tell you that traditionally, the courts have been pretty good about saying, no matter what the legislature says, we think that land use is a matter of local concern. And state, you don't get to dictate local zoning. I will also tell you that that position's frankly been eroding thanks to the legislature and the courts over the years. It's not gone, but the legislature has made some incursions where they've said, you have to treat group homes for these classes of persons as residential uses. Now, they haven't said where and what zone districts, right? And they haven't done much more than that. And so you still have room locally to act, even as a statutory town as you are. If you're a home rule community, first line of defense is to say, it's fine for you to have said that's a matter of statewide concern, but we don't think so. It's a matter of local concern. and force the court to decide, because there is not a state court level decision on whether the treatment of methadone clinics or outpatient services like this is a matter of statewide concern or not. There's no state statute, there's no case. So I'm taking way too long to tell you, if you're a home rule municipality, you've got a couple of defenses that are pretty good, but I'm also warning you that there has been an erosion in the land use as local doctrine that we just have to continue to worry about. Yep. Other questions?
Questions from our online members, Trustee LeKind?
Trustee Romanello stole my question, so thank you for answering it.
Trustee Unruh?
Excuse me, no, not at the moment.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
It's a lot of information to digest. I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay. Trustee Clark?
I do have a comment that I'd like to make. I am aware of the fact that there is a bill going through our legislative process right now to further restrict home rule authority. So I'm very happy to note that we are in the process, and hopefully we will be done before they are.
Do you have that bill number?
I can send that to you.
Okay. If there are no more questions from the board at this time, Trustee Stevens, you have? Okay. I will open it up for public comment on either ordinance 24-2021 or 25-2021. One being the complete change of the code, and the other being the zoning map. Ms. Erickson, do we have anybody online wishing to comment? Okay. Do we have anybody here tonight who would like to comment in person? Sir, if you'll come up here so the remote people can hear you.
Good evening. I'm Phil Schweitzer. I've lived here since 2001, moved here with my family. Thank you guys, staff and elected and appointed officials. Thank you for all your time on this. I got the postcard and read it through 3 or 4 times, made sure I really understood what was the purpose of the postcard. Stopped in last week, and the lobby, there was a map there, spent some time looking it over. It was really difficult for me to understand what was and what's old and what's new. It didn't, in the lobby did the display didn't call out if that was the old or the new, and I couldn't really tell if there was anything changing from that. So from that premise, then I came tonight and with some comments. Again, I've been here since 2001. I love this community, raised my family here. My children now have left the community. They've grown and left the community. Two out of 3 of them live out of state. Love to have them come back, but the housing is just simply too expensive here. One is still back in state, and I don't think I'm going to get them to move down here, but sure I'm still trying. The subject is what I call higher density code. It's commonly called affordable housing. I don't know if this is the right time to say it, but I'm going to say it anyways. I think we need to always be planning to create as much affordable housing, higher density. I don't want the state to require that. I think we as a community can say, we want area where we can have a little higher density. I do own some investment property, some rental property in town here, and it's in that lower price point. And I mean, one of my tenants is a doctor going through a divorce. His kids go to school here. Now he needs something at a lower cost. Another one of my tenants has gone through a divorce. His kids are living here, stay here, but that scenario, they can't find a lower price place to live. Another one of my tenants is staff at the Air Force Academy, husband and wife, child. it's very difficult for them to find something that's reasonably cost effective. I encourage you all to just always be looking for that spot, that little pocket in our community where we can get some little higher density. The next thing is making sure that we reserve enough land along the interstate for future businesses, companies, light, whether you call it commercial zoning or light industrial. My wife works for USSA, the insurance company, and if they were to ever decide to expand that and bring a building like that here, I don't know that we would have the land to give it to them. And making sure we reserve, I see our community being gobbled up with beautiful homes like the one I live in, you know, 700, 800,000 $1 million homes. I live in one, I love it, but we need to reserve land for the future so that we have a more stable community financially, with places where companies can come and businesses, large employers can come. My final comment relates to the Santa Fe Trail is a beautiful asset to our community. Any day of the week, you see all sorts of people using it. That is in a commercial zoned area, I believe, and that asset is going to change. I'm not saying we should, we need commercial, we need to keep that, but we need to continually plan and zone in trails like that, because that's what attracts people. That's a really key attraction in our community that will go away. It's going to change drastically. We need a parallel trail on the east side of the interstate. And, you know, again, the card you guys sent out said comment on zoning. Those are my comments. I appreciate your guys' time. I know your time is valuable. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. Is there anyone else here in person that would like to speak on this item? Sir.
Good evening. My name is Jim Stiltner. I'm a local home builder here, Masterville Homes, and been in the community since, gosh, 93. We built over off of Old Denver Highway, and appreciate what you guys are doing. It's about time we had something that was really simple to use. The big thing I wanted to find out is, can we get a copy, or is there somewhere online we can get the interactive map? See that now? And then also, can we see something? El Paso County just redid their zoning, and on their map, it shows what was specifically rezoned. So if there was something on there, I agree with them. I couldn't understand or see what was rezoned, but all in all, it was great. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Sir.
My name is Michael Royal. My family and my wife's family have lived in the area for decades. We actually currently reside in the Springs. However, we have family 4 properties in downtown Monument area. My question relates to something that's been mentioned several times here now about group homes. And I'm just wondering where that does fit within this new zoning. I saw that the houses that we have right now are in what's now called the initials before it, but the group home mentioning is something that we've been considering in terms of future use in our property. And so I'm wondering, is that allowable in this medium density zoning?
Okay. And we'll have everyone's questions answered here in a moment.
And thank you for this work. I've also been impressed by all that's gone into it.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Ms. Erickson, did we have anybody else online? Okay. If you are online and you would like to speak, please use the raise your hand icon. Okay. Mr. Lesby, you can speak when you are ready.
Okay, thank you. This is Joel Lesby. I just had one comment about the basically the survey that went around. A lot of people responded to the are you happy with the amount of open space compared to development, et cetera? I think there's possibly a misunderstanding of what open space is. Because when you drive down the highway and you drive through these areas that are undeveloped, I hope they're not considering that open space, because that's not officially what I would call open space. It's not reserved as open space by the city, but it is what appears to be open space. So when people say we're happy with the amount of balance between development and open space, I think that needs to be taken apart a little bit to try to understand what people are meaning by that. And it's probably too late because the survey's already done, but it just occurred to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Erickson, do we have anybody else online? Okay. At this time, I will close the public hearing portion of these two items and bring it back to our consultants to address any concerns during the public hearing portion.
Sure. Let me move a little closer to the mic so Martin can hear me better. While he's looking for the zone districts where group homes are permitted, appreciate that question. I'm fairly certain it'll be in largely the majority of the residential zone districts, probably short of multifamily. But
yeah, and that is the case, Jerry. They are currently two classes, actually three classes of group homes that we've listed in the use chart. Group homes that are handicapped or disabled persons of 8 people or less. Group homes that are handicapped or disabled for 9 persons or for basically more than 9 persons. And then other types of group homes. For the group homes, for those that are handicapped or disabled with 8 people or less in size, those are permitted in basically all the residential zone districts, with the exception of the mobile home park district. With the group homes that are for 9 or more handicapped or disabled folks, those are conditional in all the residential districts. Again, they're not permitted in any other residential district or commercial districts for that matter. And then group homes for others are all within the conditional category. Again, all residential districts with the exception of the mobile home park district. Those are for the standard zoning districts. Then we've also, of course, have the Regency Park overlay zone districts. And within the Regency Park overlay zone district, we've got set up so that it's the same situation. For all the residential districts, they're the same way. They're either permitted for handicap or disabled, 8 or less, or they're conditional if they're more than 9, or they're other types of group homes.
Okay, thanks, Martin. I think that answered that question. Can I also ask you to help me with, I think it was Mr. Busby's question. I'm wrecking his last name, I'm sorry, on open space. And I agree, you drive by and if there's nothing built on it, you think it's open space. And the gentleman who's a home builder here will understand and appreciate that people get to relying on the grassy field across the street, and they're darn sure that because there's nothing there, it will always remain a grassy field. And of course, then it comes in for subdivision review because it got zoned a long time ago for a certain amount of density, and they lay it on you and say, why are you doing this to the grassy field? But from a zoning designation standpoint, obviously property that's zoned for some other purpose is not listed on, or is not shown on the map as open space. Property that's zoned for open space or publicly held would be shown in what zone districts on the map, Martin?
That would be the public zone districts, or they could actually be included in within other zone districts, because open space is actually listed use on the chart. And so it's permitted in all zoning districts. So we don't call it out as a separate district because there's open space that's permitted in all districts. But if in certain cases, there might be a situation where the town may want to, say, rezone land that it currently has to a public use. But we've already done that as a part of what we're doing here with the remapping. All of the town-owned parcels and properties are zoned as public, as well as the state and federal government, which is just the post office really here. So yeah, basically open space is a use that is permitted in all zoning districts. But again, the public zoning district is one that's appropriate for where a public agency holds open space.
And it's also true that as a condition of development, as a part of a plan unit development, you'll have open space that's within the development. And that's, of course, that's open too. And it's typically available for the residents of the development. And you have all sorts of classes of that kind of open space. And so in the end, you have plenty of open area, or you've got open area in the community. But what you don't have, and that was the point of the question, I think, was where there's land that's just sitting there undeveloped, you can't count on that being, a grassy field forever. And you've got to go and look at the map. If it's already got a zoning designation that is an open space, then it's not available for that unless the ultimate development of that parcel has some open space requirements within it. But again, that's not like requiring a park. Okay, let's see what else. Martin, there was the first question I think we got, or one of them, on being able to access the interactive map. Can you explain for everyone when the board acts tonight, when that map will be live and available for people to log in and how they do that?
Yes, absolutely. That map is actually available now. It's on the town's website and accessed via what is the project website. But now that once the code is adopted and the map is adopted, then all of that will be transferred to the town, and the town will then be maintaining that and working with it, and they can host it wherever on their website. So basically right now it's available on the project website, and it will be in the process of transferring it over to the town.
Okay. Two other questions. Reserving land along the highway for commercial. I know this issue actually came up at the Planning Commission. I remember the town manager addressed it in looking at the kinds of zone districts and height standards that we have along the highway. I know that that's the intention of those highway-oriented zone districts, is to preserve a place for that kind of development, understanding that if there's already development on a parcel, you can't kick them off unless you're going to condemn that property and clear it like poor man's urban renewal. But can you describe briefly what kinds of zone districts and lands are available along the highway and what we have zoned them for?
Yes, they're primarily the commercial and industrial districts that he was mentioning. We've got what we call the, let's see, make sure I get the name right here, the Commercial Center District as well.
Can you pull up the map, maybe?
Yeah, on the map.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, we could pull that map up. If we went back to the slideshow. And if I could get screen sharing. Okay. So this is the highway here, and you can see these districts in the pink here are the CC districts. There's a lot of PUD districts along here that have been essentially these PUDs, or formerly known as plan developments, all have commercial uses identified in them. There's some additional CC districts along here. And so you'll see that most of the land that's all along the highway is currently zoned either in a industrial or commercial or some sort of a mixed use commercial industrial type of development category. The majority of it is anyway, which is appropriate.
And as the manager would say, putting on my economic development hat, you know, sometimes the challenge is you've got present owners and present development sitting there. And, you know, you'd like to be able to invite a larger campus of one sort or another. But while you've got the area zoned appropriately, let's remember they're private property rights. People own it and people have stuff on it. Or if they don't have stuff on it, they need to make that decision. What the town can do, and what all towns do, is at least make the zoning available and make the uses by right available in those locations. And then you have to some extent, rely on the private market to respond to the availability of that zoning. So that'd be in part the answer to the question. What did we leave out? I'm not sure I can answer the question regarding high density residential. There are zone districts that allow for higher density residential sprinkled throughout the community. High density residential will be allowed as a part of a planned unit development as well, and there's a lot of that zoning. So it really would mean that either property that's zoned that now would be available for that, or property that could be rezoned to one of the zone districts allowing high density. That becomes then a policy question, you know, on a parcel by parcel basis for this board. If someone has a piece of property that they believe ought to be available for high density residential and isn't, then it's a rezoning application, and that's one of those quasi-judicial site-specific rezonings. I don't think that there's a map or a code answer to that question necessarily, but that's how you encourage that. Those are the notes I had.
We had one other thing, Mr. Foreman, and I think at this point it's just for future reference, but defining changes instead of just, having, I think the comment was the two maps next to each other, but doesn't point out what's the changes.
Right.
I think we've run into that before, where we need to highlight what is actually changing of those two items.
Okay.
And I believe that was it.
Yep, those are my notes. We will make sure, right now, as Martin says, the map is available on the town's website, but you have to go to within the town's website, the land use code and map project tab. But since it'll get adopted, it's much more straightforward for it to be on a direct website, like somewhere within the town system. I'm sure we'll find the right home for it.
Jerry, can I just say one more thing?
Yep.
And we also have on our town's website projects around town that shows you all development that's happening right now, which could be industrial park, which could be high density housing such as an apartment that are being constructed or being presented to be reviewed and bring to the Planning Commission and the board. So just keep an eye on projects around town.
Okay, if that is it, we'll look for we will approve these as two separate ordinances.
And I can certainly, because we've got all these attachments, exhibits, and changes to the changes, if it's all acceptable to the board, I'm happy to recite what I believe a proper motion would be. If someone would be inclined to say so moved, it will get a record made if you're not objecting to that.
That'll work.
Fair enough. Taking up ordinance number 25-2021 first, a proper motion would be to adopt ordinance number 25-2021, an ordinance repealing Title 16 and 17 of the Monument Municipal Code and reenacting the same with amendments as Title 18 concerning land development, and in connection therewith making conforming amendments to Titles 5 and 6, including Exhibit A thereto, the code document, and Exhibit B, the summary of modifications presented to the board, with the addition in Exhibit B to an additional sixth bullet under the Exhibit B listing for Chapter 3 to read, Section 18.03.380, paren the schedule of zoning district uses, amend to move the conditional use for outpatient substance abuse facility from commercial center, CC, to business campus, BC.
Okay, are you
Just-
writing that down somewhere or
No,
posting it?
just say so moved.
So moved.
Yeah.
So moved.
We've got the
Okay.
tape, and we've got the tape.
Wait.
Yeah. So moved it. Excellent.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan, will you take roll for ordinance number 25, 2021?
Only if Mr. Dahl will send me that motion.
Yes, I promise. That's my
Verbatim.
I should have promised that.
Okay.
I always do that when I do this sort of thing, and I should have let you know that ahead of time, so you
Thank
didn't
you.
have to be
Trustee-
furiously scribbling.
Yeah.
Got it.
I'm sorry. Here comes roll call. Trustee Romanello.
Yes.
Trustee Unruh.
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Trustee LeKind.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott.
Yes.
Trustee Stevens.
Yes.
Trustee Clark. Trustee Clark.
Can you hear me?
We can now.
Okay, sorry, I don't know what was wrong with my button. My answer to that is no.
Okay, that motion passes 6-1. Mr. Dahl, do you have any special language for?
I can make a recommendation on the next ordinance as well. If Martin, you'll confirm for me the date of the current zoning map?
Yes, I believe the date is today's date, which is June 7th, 2021. It's version 18.
Got it. Thank you. A proper motion for ordinance 2421 would be to adopt ordinance 24-2021, an ordinance adopting a revised official zoning map of the town of Monument, including Exhibit A thereto, which is version 18 of the zoning district map dated June 7th, 2021.
Move as mentioned.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Clark.
No.
Trustee LeKind.
Yes.
Trustee Unruh.
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Trustee Stevens.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott.
Yes.
Trustee Romanello.
Yes.
That motion passes 6-1. Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Mr. Martin?
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate so much the work of your staff and your planning commission, who did a lot of work on this and brought to you the refined product that we were able to go through tonight. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
This takes us to item 6A, resolution number 23, 2021. Resolution in regard to town fee schedule. Ms. Flynn.
Yes, good evening. The Planning Department is requesting approval to update the Planning Department's permitting fees schedule. The Planning Department wishes to remove residential landscaping permit. The town's engineering assistant does not inspect residential landscaping for backyards. However, new residential subdivisions will be required to submit their landscaping plans to be reviewed and approved by the Planning Department. Also, homeowners will need to follow the Town of Monuments landscape design guidelines as stated in Chapter 1752040 currently, landscaping standards of the town's municipal code. And the Planning Department would like to improve the permitting process by reducing the number of fees per permit type. Many of the town's permits have 4 line items, and the town would like to reduce the line items from 4 to 3. During the workshop, Mayor Wilson inquired about omitting revocable permits. Since it's in the code 3 times, town staff believes that we should keep the revocable permit in the fee schedule because it deals with right-of-way. And if you would like me to go by the comparison, I'm more than happy to do that, but I did provide that at the workshop.
Questions, discussion from the board? Okay, hearing none, we'll look for a motion.
I do have a question. You said that it's there's amounts that occur 3 times in the.
We currently have 4 to 5 line items for permitting fees, and the town wishes to reduce the line items to 3 in most cases. And this is how most municipalities do it throughout the state of Colorado.
Okay.
We are not increasing fees. We're just having the costs as stated 3 different ways instead of 4 to 5 different ways.
So even with the revisions that we've just made on these ordinances
The ordinances that was with the code? That had nothing to do with the permitting fees. That had to do with the development review fees. And I'll be bringing that to you at the next board hearing, is the development review fees. Currently, these are the permitting fees that we are discussing tonight.
Okay. Okay, then I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 23, 2021, a resolution authorizing the revision of the town monument fee schedules.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Romanella?
Yes.
Trustee Unruh?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Trustee McKind?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
That motion passed 7-0. Item number 7A has been deleted from tonight's agenda. Item 7B, Sanctuary Town Resolution. Trustee Clark, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, I believe that the sanctuary town resolution would be an efficient way to prohibit future assaults on our constitutional freedoms, both for our citizens on a local level and on a state level, as far as encouragement to other counties who are currently engaging in the same process. These clauses will help tremendously should there be another pandemic situation where we would have more control. And I think it would be a good stopgap measure until we have our home rule charter firmly in place. I think it would provide additional protections that the citizens want in regard to any frivolous or illegal or unconstitutionally created mandates or executive orders coming from the state level, the federal level, or foreign entity levels. So I'd like to submit it for review of the board and input and discussion and whatever else it will take to get it on the agenda.
Okay. The only language I have seen, like I stated in the last meeting, is poorly written. contradictory and in some fashions anti-constitution at best. If you have something that you feel is written appropriately, please feel free to send us. You also mentioned last meeting that you would send me some reviewing
Yes,
documents in regards to constitutional attorney's approval of that language, and I never received that. So I'm personally at this point, I'm not interested in entertaining this much more.
Well, I can assure you, Mayor Wilson, that it has had constitutional review, and Rio Blanco County passed it just about 2 weeks ago.
Well, you can assure me that, but you said you'd send me the documentation supporting that, and you haven't done that.
I thought that that would have gotten through to you already, but I will recheck my email and see why you did not receive it.
I'm truly anxious to see a constitutional attorney that supports the document as written that I've seen.
Well, the county that just passed it also had an additional constitutional review, and it passed. So I will be happy to also send you the contact information in addition to the actual sanctuary declaration for Rio Blanco.
I will wait to see that. Is there other discussion on this item?
Yeah, I think personally, I think the resolution I saw earlier is too broad. It just basically says anything that's unconstitutional, we're going to disagree with. I think we would be better served by being very specific to say, for example, take one issue, second issue, third issue. So the red flag law that the U.S. Supreme Court has just overturned, that we will not use any town resources in order to enforce the red flag law. So that would be a resolution I could get behind because it's specific. It says exactly what we're going to do. It allows the citizens of Monument to understand where we stand on the situation. So critical race theory, again, another topic we could craft a resolution saying, you've taken an oath of office to uphold the Constitution. Critical race theory undermines the Constitution, and therefore, here, whereas and therefore, like you would do. And so you're specifically addressing specific issues. I think if we're targeted, then people will know. But there will be people, if we just do a general, I believe, if we do a general, well, anything that's unconstitutional that we disagree with, there'll be people that will say, well, I'm not paying my federal taxes because they raised them too high and it's too, and people will interpret whatever. And I also disagree with the idea of that one attorney, because what you're doing is you're empowering one attorney that basically supplants the U.S. Supreme Court. That's their job to declare what's at a federal level, what is unconstitutional. And then who's to say, and the Democrats are masters at this, who's to say that constitutional attorney that gets appointed is not a Ruth Bader Ginsburg attorney or something like that? So again, it could backfire on us very easily. So those are my concerns about a broad general resolution like the one that was presented. My proposal would be that we would target specific resolutions stating specific positions and what we would do about them.
Which I agree with Trustee Stevens, and we have done that in the past. We did that with the red flag bill, and we've done it with Smethers. I feel that is much more appropriate than a generalized sanctuary town resolution.
Can I ask a question? What resolution are we speaking of? Is this based on the emails that continuously hit my inbox from a specific resident in the county areas that is wanting us to? Because I don't have anything from anybody that I have seen.
As far as I'm aware, that's all we're talking about.
Okay, so the person is not a resident when I checked of the town of Monument proper. So certainly not believing I have an obligation to give any more credence to it right now. But if there is a specific language that's being written by one of the board members, I would like to see it before we discuss it.
Okay.
I also, I believe in, protecting the first, second, and all the amendments. But when someone is presenting something, saying we want to be a constitutional town, but yet is talking about the CDC and Fauci, and I'm going, where's the disharmony here? I don't understand. There's, it's a dichotomy that I don't get.
I would like to say that I sent that to the attorney several weeks ago, and he was supposed to distribute to all of you.
I believe we did get that at the time. That's been quite some time since that was sent out. Is
So
there
that
any
is
further-
that the resolution we're talking about? The one that I sent to the attorney to distribute to each and every one of you?
I would assume so. That's the only one we've gotten.
Okay, so I don't
Other
know.
than which is verbatim what the resident that Trustee LeKind was speaking about.
Well, I'm not familiar with that, but I am familiar with the verbiage that I sent over to the attorney. So that's what I've been discussing.
I can't say that I see in my email anything from our town attorney related to the language you're proposing, Trustee Clark. My apologies, but I don't see it.
It was possibly like 2 months ago.
Oh,
I don't think it was 2 months ago, but I'll go and check the email I sent to the attorney for the date. But it was supposed to be distributed to everyone.
Mayor Wilson, but it wasn't that just distributed to everybody in an email? There was no critique of the verbiage or anything from our legal counsel?
No, it was just shared with us, which I believe was the direction. Mr. Ricci?
Yes, I have sent everything I received from Trustee Clark. And I will also note, and Trustee Clark, if you can confirm this, I found the Rio Blanco County Resolution. It is Rio Blanco County Resolution number 2021-13.
I'm actually
Say that again?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. What was your
Okay.
last comment?
I said I am actually out of town and not able to put my fingers on that bill number or the sanctuary notice number myself. So I can't confirm that for you, Mr. Ritchie.
Okay.
I guess, Mayor
it
Wilson,
is-
my point earlier was that I think that anything that the board reviews, certainly none of us on the board, to my knowledge, are legal counsel for anybody. So, I'm just thinking about when we spend time to review something for consideration, that maybe it's something that we're, that potentially could be something for consideration based on a legal review that has already taken place.
Okay. The original language for sanctuary resolution was sent April 19th. Mr. Ricci shared it, I believe, again, May 10th.
Well, I don't see any emails May 10th from Mr. Ricci. What was the April date?
April 19th.
I have no emails from Mr. Ricci in the month of April.
Actually, I'm looking at my email right now, Trustee LeKind.
Yeah.
And you were left off of it.
Thank you.
It got every board member but yourself.
Mr. Ricci, in the future, if
there
you're going
you
to file
go.
an email, please send it to me as well, as I'm a trustee elected.
Yes, and I think I have determined why that is. Our our email listing for BOT that I picked did not have your name, and so we will fix that.
Or you just don't like him?
It
Sounds
has
like
nothing to do with
a
not liking.
IT
Trustee
I gotta
Barrett.
have fun with this. I mean, come on. It's 9:10, right? We gotta have fun.
Is there any further discussion on this item?
That was a joke, by the way. It's just a joke. Someone's got to make it light.
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 8. Public comment. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. Is there anybody in person that would like to make public comment? Miss Erickson, do we have anybody online? Okay. We will leave public comment on open momentarily while we move to board authorization items. Board authorization items, Ms. Flynn. You have enclave annexations scheduled for July 19th.
Yes, on July 19th, the Planning Department will be presenting to you 3 annexations of properties that are adjacent to the Town of Monument's limits and contained in enclaves. 2 out of 3 of the properties intend to develop after their annexations are approved. The remaining property will be part of a lot line adjustment.
Okay. Is there any, does the board have any issues with that for July 19th? Okay, that's good. Designated voting delegate at the Colorado Municipal League annual business meeting, Ms. Hogan.
When I received notification from CML that they were requesting each municipality designate a voting delegate for their annual business meeting, I immediately forwarded that email to the entirety of the Board of Trustees and placed this item on this agenda for you all to discuss amongst yourselves and let me know who you would like me to reach out with CML as the voting delegate for that meeting.
Okay. Trustee Clark expressed interest in this, and she was our delegate for last year. Is there anyone else of interest in this item?
Is this the item that I saw from them on the email for a town within a certain size that has 3 delegates for that town, or is this something separate?
This is the person that votes for those people.
Oh, okay.
Okay, does anybody have an issue with Trustee Clark remaining in that that designated voting delegate? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Trustee Clark, you are hereby appointed to that our CML delegate for the annual business meeting. Item C, ordinance referring debrucing. I know some of our board members were not here for that meeting. The debrucing effort died on a lack of motion. Town staff would like to bring that back and taking that conversation and other conversations they've had with a couple options to present before the board. What meeting are you asking for that, Mr. Foreman?
The very next meeting.
Which is the 17th, 21st.
21st.
I don't think I would like to bring this back forward.
Okay.
Well, I think in the proper form, it could be effective because I think the issue is that the way it was written was not specific enough. But I think if we put it in a phrase to say that the money is going, I think in concept, I like the idea of what where we're going with that, because the alternative is, I think, write a check for $45 to everyone, as opposed to putting that money in an account to be used for repairing our roads, or for that matter, constructing roads. So I think, I think in principle, we're on the right track, but just the specific language and the way it was written, at that time, I couldn't concur with it. So I think if we decided, now we can put a limit on it or something like that and say for the next 4 years or next 12 years if we want to, because I think we said, correct me if my numbers are wrong, you said we would have to pay back $400,000, which amounts to like $45 per person. So we'd have to write a check for everyone for $45, or we could take that $400,000 or however much it is, somewhere in that range, I think, and put it in an account and use it towards our roads. And I think everybody would approve to say, that would be worth it if that money went to our roads. And I think if we set it that way, that says for the next 4 years, the next 12 years, or we could do it in perpetuity and just say all the money excess money that we receive from the, in and above the Tabor limit, that we put that money in an account that goes towards fixing our roads, because certainly we need to widen Denver Highway. We're talking about annexing Higbee. We're talking about, widening Jackson Creek. So there's no lack of projects that we need. And I think if we set it right, there would be a way that would work with the people.
I would be open to having it come back.
I think having it go to the voters is the wise way, because if they want it, they want it. If they don't, they don't. And I'm okay with at least letting it go to a vote.
Well, I think we need to also specify what type of language we want to do. Do we want to do this for 4 years, or do we want to do it for just next year and then come back the following year and do this every year? Or do we want to do it for the next 4 years or 12, or just say we've got so many road projects ahead of us that we could continue this, and let it continue to fund a road fund?
I think that would be the direction with town staff bringing that back with several options.
That's I was going to ask. Do we have to make
All
that
we're-
decision now?
No.
Or,
Well,
okay.
all-
Okay. Good.
We need to
Good.
give
Well, my-
direction to
my-
the town staff as to how we want to do it. Do we want to? I think everybody's kind of in agreement. We need to fix the roads here. But I think how we want to do it, whether we want to do it over, say, next 4 years, the next 8 years, or just we got so many road projects, just let it, continue to fund that with excess revenue over the Tabor limit.
The general
Mr.
consensus I have received from my constituents is that they want their money back.
So, Mr. Foreman, would you be seeking individual feedback for how you want to bring this back?
I think currently, Trustee Stevens has a great point. I think that if we could get consensus that you want to take the excess funds and place that in a capital projects fund, then I think probably all we're looking at is how long do you want to do that for? Do you want to do it for 4 years? Do you want to do it for 12? Or do you want to do it in perpetuity? Because I have heard from several members that they'd like to put this in a capital projects fund. I think it's a great use for it. And so, yes, staff is going to need direction on how to create a form of ballot issue option to bring to you on the 21st.
Well, I don't believe I'm ready to. I don't have direction for that. So
I would like to say again, can you hear me? Can you guys
Yes.
hear? Okay, I just wasn't sure if I was being heard. My constituents have told me very clearly and very thoroughly that they want their money back. They don't want the town to keep it. Any overage they want refunded to them. I would just like to be very specific and clear on that.
okay.
I need to say that when there's an issue and we get emails, I think we all get emails. I mean, when I was on that side of the podium, I would send an email to everybody if I had an issue. I haven't got an email like that from anybody at all. So, or a phone call or anything. I would like to give it to the choice of the voters. My question, though, with what you gentlemen are saying is very appropriate. It's like, do we do this for a period of time and let another board continue it? Do we not? Do we get the voters the chance to put new board members in that will entrust those funds? I mean, that is the question to me.
Right. And I personally, I don't agree with Trustee Clark. I've had more people complaining about the roads and when are we going to do something about the roads? And when are we going to, when are we going to widen Jackson Creek? You know, so, you know, that's that's what I'm hearing, from my constituents. So I think, personally, I think if we're specific and we're willing to say, we need a resolution. I mean, we need or whatever, a referendum that puts this money into an account and the account uses it for road construction and road development or whatever. And then I think, at least the constituents I'm talking to would support that. And I think we just need to make a decision, in order to give the board direction, whether it's going to be for a period of time or go on, or whether we think we got so many road projects out there that, and you know, this is Colorado. So you fix it and, you fix it and then what is it, 4 years, it's broken again, you know, so.
So you are, Mr. Foreman, you can't bring a couple options forward
Yes.
that say this spot, you know,
Yeah,
number of
we'll
years.
just leave D. Bruce in. Right now it says one of the options is in perpetuity. We just leave that blank and
Okay,
y'all vote.
that's what I
on
was
that.
going to say.
Yeah, you just leave it blank and then on the 21st, you vote on what you want to fill in the blank with. Correct? Yep.
Can I just get some feedback from my fellow trustees then? Do you think that like doing this on a 4-year basis, which matches our term, to
Well,
give, I'm just asking
What we're-
information. I'm not asking about it right now.
I
Okay,
think
sorry.
what we're saying is, do we want to discuss that at the next meeting? Or
Right.
Great.
do we want to move this back to a discussion item and discuss it tonight?
Yeah, no, let's move. Yes, sorry.
I think again that we are neglecting to remember why Tabor was created, and the purpose was to get the money back to the taxpayers for their discretionary use. It's their money. It's kind of like stealing. I don't think it's a
that
good
was-
idea.
It was created on a state level for the state legislator for statewide, not for municipal needs. And the main concept behind Tabor is that the voters get the choice in it, not the governing body.
Again, the constituents that I've talked to have been very firm in their decrying of taking this money that is theirs. I want to make sure the board is very well aware of their feelings and their position. They don't want to use it for roads or anything else. They want it returned to them. And they made it very clear to me, so I want to make sure that I have fully communicated to you guys what their intention is, and that is to receive their money back.
And Trustee Clark, I think what staff is requesting is just the ability to allow your constituents, along with everybody else's constituents, to have that voice and to vote in November on how they want to spend those funds.
And I'm all for that.
Trustee LeKind. Okay. Trustee LeKind.
Yeah, so I would like to let the voters, the at-large constituents, tell us what they would like to do. I would like them to appear in front of the board. I would like them to email or call or send smoke signals to the entire board with their opinion of what we should do with the money. But at the very least, we owe it to them to have the ability to vote on it as it's been legislated for them to do through Tabor.
Trustee Unruh.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to bringing it in front of all of our constituents to, like was mentioned, just to have them vote on it and hear everyone's voice.
Okay. So I think we've reached the conclusion that you will bring it forward next meeting. several options with some holes in them.
Yes, sir. I think I understand my direction from you.
Okay. Board authorization items. I just added one because I realized it before the meeting. July 6th, we have a scheduled meeting. We do not have, at this time, we do not have anything pertinent on that agenda, it being around the holiday and some people being out of town possibly. We do have the opportunity to cancel the July 6th meeting if the board would like.
Hear, hear.
I agree.
Okay. Anybody opposed to canceling the July 6th meeting? Okay, Ms. Hogan, will you take the necessary steps to have the cancellation posted? Thank
Staff
you.
really appreciates that, Mayor.
Ms. Erickson, to back up, did we have any public comments come up? Okay, public comments are closed for this meeting. Board of Trustee comments.
Yes, I would like to thank Madeline for an awesome job on the Memorial Day service, and or whatever you want to call it, and the mayor and Ron and Mitch, and I shouldn't name names because now I'm going to leave somebody out and someone's feelings are going to get hurt, but that was one of the most beautiful things I've ever attended, and I just want to thank you all for that. It was amazing, and I appreciate it. I also want to speak just real quickly to the gentleman that was in here, just for public record, that the recoding really seemed benign in what we were doing. We already have and have approved new apartments going in over by the Fairfield. We already have on Cynthia's Mitchell duplexes all the way to 2-acre lots. And we have approved high density to grow our town. So I just wanted to make that public. Okay, thank you.
Any other Board of Trustee comments? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.